My name is Nhlanhla Lucky Nkosi. I work as a software engineer in the research and development unit of South Africa's largest independently owned bespoke software development firm. We're the largest but also the oldest independent software development firm. We've been in this game for about 35 years now. We recently celebrated our 35th birthday, and I studied engineering at Wits, and I'm currently pursuing a postgraduate degree in game design. And really, that's where I'm honing my passion, which is to revolutionize how we do teaching, how we do education in general, but particularly in the STEM fields. See, I'd like to break this superficial barrier that we've created around technology, about it being this difficult, weird thing that comes from aliens. We have a saying on my team that we're building these systems not for computers and not for other engineers, but for people. And I think simply the ecosystem of technology hasn't really created that feeling yet. People still feel that technology is this weird foreign thing. And my passion really is to use technology to bring about change in people's lives by introducing more and more young people into technology in order to get them to use it for change. How I plan on using it for change is really by challenging how we do education and using technology and games to really make technology much more accessible to people from all sorts of different backgrounds. What am I doing with drone? I found through my research and through all the work that I've done with education that we teach these really abstract concepts such as biology. I mean, biology is probably the least of the abstract concepts in the sciences, because with biology we can walk outside, we can look at plants, we can look at ourselves, we can think of ourselves. But we teach maths, we teach physics in very impractical ways. We teach them at a theoretical level where people, or where the children who are learning about them, don't actually see the practical applications of it. And what I've found is that learners will often very quickly disconnect from the content that's being delivering because they don't see value in what they are learning. And a theorist named Paul G writes about intrinsic motivation and how we need to use intrinsic motivation to teach and to stimulate. And one of the most powerful motivators is the interest to want to learn. Now, a lot of learners in school feel like we're teaching them in a manner that forces them to learn. You have to do this because you have to pass school, otherwise you will be a failure, which is really the wrong way of going about it. What I want to do and what I've seen is that if you instead motivate them intrinsically, get them interested in the topic, and then get them to actually be passionate and want to learn about it, they will put in so much more effort and they will actually do better. So what I do with technology such as drones is that we view these technological feats really as really weird, out of touch things like, whoa, we have a drone, whoa, you can fly a drone. And I challenge that and I flip it on its head. I use drones to teach. I have a 9-year-old brother and I'm getting him interested in technology because he's a really smart kid, but I see that he's getting bored in school. So to challenge him and to keep him motivated, I bought him a really, really cheap drone. And it's now his mission by the end of the year to hack this drone the same way that I've hacked mine. And I'm going to give him tools bit by bit, because what that does is that in his head, his end goal is to be able to fly this really cool drone. But now what I've done is, in order for him to get there, he now needs to learn a lot of really useful tools such as programming. And even if it's just block programming, procedural thinking, problem solving, these are all critical skills that lay the foundation of the sciences really. So I use really interesting tools to do two things. The first is to teach and make people realize that these things aren't that difficult. That's why I always structure my talks to be, or the narrative behind my talks is, this is easy, you can do it as well, because I'd like to get more young people involved in working with technology. And the second phase of it is, I'm really interested, my personal branch of technology is in human-computer interaction. See, from the time we've had computers, we've only had one means of really interacting with them, and that's been the keyboard and the mouse. When we came with the smartphone and touchscreen devices, we revolutionized how we did things. When we started interacting with computers using accelerometers and gyroscope. We had entire industries that then came up. Fitbits are exactly that, fitness trackers. An entire ecosystem of technologies and industries came about just by rethinking how we interact with computers. So my hobby is really taking what some people might term dumb things and turning them into smart things. And I mean, I've turned fruit into keyboards to show how we can, think outside of the box in terms of how we engage with technology. And this does two things. It creates a really, really meaningful experience that challenges, that gets us to think beyond our current limitations, but it also makes us think about accessibility. Because if we have all of these tools, all of these different ways in which we can interact with computers, we can then start thinking about how to build systems that accommodate the widest range of people yet. When we build websites, when we build mobile web and applications, we often have people that live with disabilities as an afterthought. But when we start thinking about how we interact with computers, we then start thinking about how we design for people with color blindness, or how we design with people with all levels of ability in terms of their sight, their hearing, and all of these other things. When we start thinking about how we interact with computers actively and not just as a given thing that we take for granted, we really start putting every single individual human being that is likely to use our technology at the core of our design principles. I recently spoke at LinuxConf in South Africa, which and I have a talk, or I gave a talk rather, titled Africa's Future is Open Source. And I really think that we need to come to the realization, and I think we have started coming to the realization, that South Africa as a whole has been bled through the years, and that technology provides us that opportunity to really decentralize our future, to really democratize what it means to be successful in the global scale. And I say this because when we look at the skills and talent that we're producing on the continent, we're producing world-class technologists. We are producing world-class developers that are getting poached by massive corporations from all over the world. I mean, if we look at the fact that South Africa has a high skills shortage of software developers, of technologists, but we still have a 56% plus unemployment rate, this shows a gap in which we need to start matching demand and the skills that we're developing. But I think more importantly, what we're doing by growing the technology field and making it accessible to more people is that we're empowering people to be entrepreneurs. Because when you empower people with the power to create, you're empowering people with the power to really self-sustain. 100 years ago, that had largely to do with land and farming and being able to produce your own food so that you can sell it, or to be able to keep your kettle and sell that. But we're now seeing a whole new kind of commercial ecosystem where you don't need a lot of space, you don't need a lot of tools. All you need is a simple computer. And now it's even becoming something as simple as your smartphone, which currently we have twice as many smartphones on the continent than we have people, right? So this means that we as technologists need to think how to build systems that are accessible for our people on the continent, and how to empower people to get them to build solutions for themselves. Because what we've seen over the decades in Africa is that our own resources are taken to go and build things that will then come back and be sold to us. And now we're starting to see the similar trend in the tech space, where African talented engineers and developers are going abroad to build systems that are then sold to us. And the worst part is that more often than not, those systems are used to either oppress us, or they don't even correctly fit or perfectly fit our needs and applications. And by empowering African developers and African engineers to design and build their own solutions, we're empowering them to build solutions that actually fit and work for our context. And a very simple idea or practical example of this is when we speak of the web. We're seeing more and more people experiencing, or the core means through which they experience technology being through the internet and web browsers. And we are in a context where our internet infrastructure is really subpar when you compare it to the likes of the United States or Europe, which means that the development context forces us to be much more aware of performance, which means that we're breeding engineers that are much more network conscious, that are building much more progressive applications and websites that are highly performant. And those are the kind of solutions that your Western or companies that are based in the Western world will not be able to give you, because that's not the reality that they live in. But it's one that we as African engineers and developers actually live and have to work in. 5G has been highly politicized, and rightfully so, because we've seen with the 2016 scandal of Cambridge Analytica, the critical role that data is playing. Data, personal data in particular, is said to be more valuable than oil, which means that the next war is likely to be either over data or water. And this is particularly important because whoever lays the foundation of 5G infrastructure actually has access to everyone's personal information. And we're seeing now with countries like China where they've built a social system that not only monitors what you do, but then also starts influencing how you make your decisions. There was a recent bug that was found in the system where they found that the system awarded points to people with families, so people with children. So what people started doing is that they started buying nappies even when they didn't actually have children. Because what this AI then did, it assumed that if you're buying nappies, chances are you have a baby, and it started awarding you more points. We are in a space where information and our digital footprint is not only a leisure, but it's now becoming a fundamental human right. And so whoever lays the foundation of our 5G infrastructure and what moves us into the next industrial revolution will really hold the monopoly over all of us. And we've seen that with data, we can really control everything because everything is really connected now. So I think it will be good for development in Africa, especially because of the physical land mass that we cover as a continent, and it'll allow us to reach more people faster in terms of technology and getting services to them. But it also poses a huge risk to fundamental human rights, and it's something that data activists need to take on. It's something that all of us should be constantly thinking about, and thinking about how to ensure that the things we build as engineers and as developers, at the core of it, prioritizes the everyday person who's likely to use the technology. And it requires all of us really as technologists to be activists in all the different spaces that we're in, and to share the knowledge that we have, and to share all of these ideas that we have around data and security and privacy. Because it is only once we are aware of what's out there that we can start developing means and ways to defend ourselves against those threats. So this is the Parrot Mambo, and I used a library called Mini Drone Jazz, which is a Bluetooth Low Energy based library. And what I'm doing essentially is that I'm hosting a node server on my computer, and I'm using Google Chrome DevTools to do something called port forwarding. What that means is that I'm hosting a server on localhost on my machine, but I'm going to give my phone access to that server so that it can get access to what my JavaScript code is running on my machine. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on the floor. It's currently flashing green, which means that it's ready to be connected to. It's on the floor now, and when I press F5, it will try to connect to the drone. And once it has successfully connected to the drone, which it has now, I'm going to load localhost 3000 on my computer, on my phone, which is then visible on my screen. Now what this is doing is that it has now given me access to my phone's accelerometer directly from the browser, which is a new experimental API that's available in the Chrome browser. What this actually means is that if I hold my phone up straight, then this drone should take off if it is connected. So now that I've served my website, I'm simply going to reconnect to the drone, and it should tell me that it's connected. So now if I do this, the drone simply takes off, right? And if I tilt it back, the drone will move backwards, and if I tilt it forward, it will go there, And now I can move it to the left. I am standing in opposite direction, so my sense of direction is messing with me. But now I can do some really, really awesome things like backflip, right? Which is some really, really super fun things. And I can make it move to the left, and I can even make it do front flips, right? Maybe not kill myself, but I can also make it land. That crashed. So, I think it's still connected, should be fine. Just have to reset it and it should be fine.